When I was 27 years old, my mother died from complications of her alcoholism, which came as a bit of a surprise to my siblings and I, because we always assumed that after seeing this, my father would have been the one with a drinking problem. Anyone who has ever been personally close to an addict knows that addicts can be a bit overstated, to say the least. And my mother was no exception. If you've never seen a drunken woman trying to make change for $1 at a Friendly's in New Jersey because she wants to tip her server a penny because he refused to put Baileys in her milkshake, you're really missing out on a special experience. My mental and emotional bank is filled with gems like this from my mother, and a woman like that does not go down easy. Oh no, not my mother, who had skill with four-letter words that was practically poetic. No, she went down swinging, and she went down with a bang. We found my mother on the floor of her bedroom in the townhouse she lived alone in the day before Thanksgiving. Now, even for my mother, that was a bit dramatic. Now I know where I get it. I'm one of 5 siblings, so we all jumped into action trying to figure out what was going on around us and how to handle it. We started calling friends and family and funeral homes and florists and bartenders who would have to adjust for this loss of income without her. And all I could think to myself was, my God, she would be so disappointed to know that she bowed out now, the day before Thanksgiving, when I had made the gravy out of Franzia. My mother, I know this sounds harsh. I know it sounds harsh. And I know you're thinking to yourself, Pissi Myles, my God, your mother, an alcoholic, has just died, and all you can think about is wine. But let me tell you something, if you had spent any significant amount of time around my mother, you would have spent a lot of time thinking about drinking too. She was a bull-headed woman, and she loved fiercely, especially if your name was Tito, and you were served on the rocks. She lied a lot. And she messed up a lot of things for a lot of people for a long time. But I don't want you to get the wrong impression of my mother. She was essentially a good person who I'm sure cared very deeply about her family and who obviously left me with some very wonderful memories. But they're all clouded by the knowledge that the woman I thought she was is probably not the woman she actually was. Why is all of this important? Why is all of this important? My mother shaped my entire life. I spent my entire childhood searching for an escape from reality, and if I didn't find it, I don't know where to look anymore. My entire adulthood has been spent searching for meaning or understanding. And my mother taught me one thing that I know is true. It's not that serious. Nothing is that serious. How do you cope with the loss of someone who brought you your greatest joy and your greatest sadness? How do you come to terms with the loss of someone you tried so hard to understand? How do you justify the existence of a television show like 2.5 Men? If you're anything like me, you learn to laugh at it. Unless it's 2.5 Men, it's just not funny. There is a term in the entertainment business for when comedy takes a turn towards the inappropriate. It's called going blue. There are a lot of famous blue comics like Joan Rivers and Andrew Dice Clay who were called blue not just because of the colorful language they used, but because of the topics they chose to talk about. Things like race and people's appearances and their sexuality and their class. They talked about these things, but they also joked about them. They made fun of them because they knew there was one humanizing quality about all of us, and it is that we are all commonly weird. I have met a lot of different people in my chosen profession, and I use that term loosely, who are going through a lot of different hardships. A few years ago, I was performing at a bar in Queens. Hold for applause, thank you. And I was bantering with the audience, and I saw a young woman out in the crowd, and I said, "Miss, are you single?" Which I often ask as I'm looking for things to make fun of people for. And she said, "Yes, newly." And I said, "Oh my." "By choice?" And she said, "No." Now, this is a rough situation. This poor girl in this moment could probably use a little bit of understanding, some sympathy, or if she's anything like me, a cheese Danish. But I looked at her and I said, "Well, you must be thrilled that Adele is coming out with a new album." And she laughed. She laughed because we all knew we had found ourselves in an awkward situation. This poor girl was probably mortified having her private business splayed out in front of a bunch of strangers at a bar in Queens, no less. But I leaned into it. I acknowledged it, and I allowed her to look at her situation a little bit differently. Because we all knew that it was awkward. We all knew that at some point in our young adult lives, we had all sat in the dark, sobbing quietly, listening to someone like you while looking up love potions on Wicca.net. After the show, that girl came up to me and she said, "I wanted to thank you. I've been having a really rough month, and this breakup has been very difficult for me, but it was nice to finally be able to laugh about it." And that happens to me a lot more than you would think. Whether I'm talking about people's personal lives or current events or the political climate or the current scandal, whatever it is, people come up to me and they say, "This thing has been weighing heavily on me, and you finally gave me permission to laugh at it." Now, this girl's situation is not nearly as dark as the jokes I made about my mother. But it's the same in that it allows you to look at something that could be scary, maybe even overwhelming, and to make it just whelming. Because if you take something that is scary and you find the funny in it, it takes its power away. And that's not always easy. What if it's something scarier like coming out to your family as a queer person? If you've never had to do this, it's not a lot of fun. There's always kind of a fear of the shame and the dishonor and the rage that you could inflict upon yourself by breaking, presumably, your loved ones' hearts, or shattering their expectations of you, or worse, challenging their religious beliefs. So when young people come up to me and tell me that they're afraid to come out to their parents, I always tell them the story of how I came out to my father. My father does not deal well with change. Yeah, you've met him. He can be a little bit harsh. He is a kind, smart, loving man, but he can be harsh, and he can be intimidating, and he has a booming voice. So I was his oldest son. I was the one who he expected to slide into third base, not slide into the perfect split. Unfortunately for both of us, I can do neither. So I found it a bit difficult to talk to my father. So I would leave him notes on his bed. So when I came out to my father, I left him one of my notes. And I told him, it doesn't change who I am. I still love you the same. And maybe now, finally, we can figure out just what the hell is going on with that confusing decor in the living room together. I left the note on his pillow before he came home from work, and I went and I sat, waiting anxiously in the living room on the couch. My father came home, and he walked, as usual, to his bedroom with very few words and closed the door behind him. I sat, again anxiously, waiting for him to come out, hoping that maybe he had felt the same way about me. I sat for a while. And about a half an hour later, I heard his door open. And I glued my eyes to the TV in front of me as I heard his footsteps coming down the stairs. I didn't want to make eye contact with him. And he walked into the room, and he sat down next to me on the couch, and my heart was pounding. It was pounding like it was present day and I had forgotten my hypertension medication. I was terrified. And my father said quietly to me, there's a lot of diseases out there. Just be careful. And he got up and he walked into the kitchen and made a sandwich. It seemed my parents were grooming me for a career in comedy. But what they had actually given me was a lot more important. It was a very valuable life lesson. We can change the way the world affects us. And I don't mean looking for the positive, because I don't believe in looking for the silver lining. I think it's a meaningless business. But there is power in looking for the funny in your given situation. Finding the funny in the dark is as close as you can come to finding the light. I don't think it's unhealthy to find the funny in any given situation. As a matter of fact, I think it can save you, and I think it has saved me in the past, and it will save me in the future. As a matter of fact, I hope that one day when I die, it is because I get run over by a truck full of Haagen-Dazs. The beauty to be the butt of a joke like that. And this is an ample butt. Thank you.